Well, good morning everybody. As people would be aware, there's been significant rain overnight and it will continue today. We are very pleased though that the levee in Lismore did not overtop. That does not, however, mean that people should feel as though that they should be moving back into the areas that are there. The SES focus today, and I will take you through the detail of this, is very much assessing the damage and reviewing the warnings. The message very much is that you may think that it is okay to go back home, but until you are told to do so, please don't. There is safety issues in a whole range of ways that's not just about the level of the water. There are issues like live electricity wires, debris, and rotten and dangerous areas. So the very big message from us today is, while we're starting and working through the recovery actions that will be in place as soon as possible, please follow all of the warnings. Do not take it upon yourself. If you do so, you risk not just yourself, but you also risk the very good staff and volunteers who have come, many, thousands of them who are there to help. So I really ask people to follow that advice. I want to just particularly acknowledge and that our thoughts are with the family of the man whose body was recovered yesterday. He was able to be found, but it's a very sad thing to lose someone in these circumstances, and we're thinking of his family. We're obviously also concerned about the ADF staff. We know that they came to help. They are heroic in the efforts that they're undertaking to support the community. My advice is that there are 13 of them who are still injured and in hospital. Details of that is a matter for the ADF, but on behalf of New South Wales, we want to particularly just acknowledge the incredible efforts that are being made. They're working with police in terms of investigating exactly what happened, but we just really wish them a speedy recovery as soon as possible. Some of the flooding that's happening is moving beyond just the northeast and into the northwest. I want to assure communities in Moree and others that, again, pre-deployment and action and advice is coming together to work through those matters. But before I go any further today, I think we'll just get the updates, particularly from the SES and then from the Bureau. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Damien Johnson, Deputy Commissioner, New South Wales State Emergency Service. So we saw flooding continuing and rainfall throughout the night, and will continue to happen today. There's approximately 14,600 people that are currently under emergency warnings throughout the state, and we've got 141 warnings, with 36 of those being emergency warnings current. Now, it's really important that the public continue to adhere to the warnings. The vast majority of the public have adhered to the warnings. However, that being said, a very small minority are still seeking to drive through floodwaters. In the last 24 hours, we've had 17 incidents that have occurred as a result of people driving into floodwaters. Not only is it a danger to yourself and your family, it's also dangerous as well for the volunteers, the emergency service workers that need to rescue you. Fortunately, we've had successful outcomes with those 17 incidents with people being rescued. So please adhere to the warnings. We don't issue them lightly. It's really important for your safety and your family's safety. So we'll hear from Mick from the BOM shortly. We'll continue to see widespread rain. There will be a continued focus with that rain also moving over the tablelands to northwestern New South Wales, and we're also then having a look at what that might mean for areas like Moree and other locations out there in northwestern New South Wales. A number of days ago, we stood up the Incident Command Centre with an incident management team within our northwestern zone to make sure we're well prepared for any outcomes that might result from that rainfall being west of the tablelands. I know that people are very eager and keen to get into their homes as soon as possible. The New South Wales SES is working quickly to remove any evacuation warnings where we can, but it needs to be safe to do so. We will do that as quickly as possible, but we're focused on rapid damage assessments. That's important to make sure it's safe for people to return to their homes, and there are a large number of risks that occur as a result of flooding, both flash flooding and also riverine flooding. That can be debris in waters, it can be contaminants in waters, it can be electrical hazards as well. So even when you do return to your home, make sure that you do assess those risks and make sure that you don't put yourself or family in harm's way. So the total incidents in the last 24 hours has been 917. And as I mentioned, 17 of those incidents as a result of cars entering floodwaters. If you haven't done already, I'd urge you to download the Hazards Near Me app. Keep an eye on the warnings, set your local area, and it will send you warnings resulting from what may be occurring with warnings being issued in your local area. Also download the Bureau's app, and you can monitor weather conditions as well. Just lastly, I'd like to thank the emergency service workers, and particularly the New South Wales SES volunteers. We've got a large number of volunteers that are actually gone from their community into the northeast of New South Wales and the mid-north coast to support other communities. Their family and friends that they're away from, thank you for allowing them to do so. And lastly, thank you to the employers. Without the employers allowing these volunteers to go and support their communities, it wouldn't be possible.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. So the impacts of ex-tropical cyclone Alfred do continue in parts of northeast New South Wales today. A severe weather warning does remain current, and that includes heavy rainfall, which can still lead to flash flooding, and that's possible about parts of the northern rivers, the Dorrigo Ranges in the mid-north coast, and parts of the northern tablelands. The severe weather warning areas are reducing near the coast, so we are seeing some easing of conditions, particularly in parts of the mid-north coast. And the heavy rainfall is forecast to continue to ease later Sunday nearer the coast. The severe weather warning also includes damaging winds. Therefore, easterly wind gusts that could be in excess of 90 kilometres an hour, and they remain possible just over the elevated terrain this morning, including the border ranges and across the northern tablelands. They will also expected to ease later this afternoon. While the seas still remain quite higher than normal, they are also slowly easing, and the coastal hazard severe weather warning has been cancelled. As the system continues to move inland, as mentioned, the rainfall will extend further inland today, and that will bring the flood risk across the rivers that are in the northwest slopes and plains. Those areas are covered in the current flood watch. In terms of the flood warnings, there's flood warnings in place for 11 rivers. There's major flooding being observed in the Richmond and Ballinger systems at the moment. And with the rainfall and the water that's moving through the systems, there's also possibility of major flooding occurring in the Tweed and the Clarence River systems. Just touching on the Wilsons River, that peaked yesterday afternoon at 9.31 metres. So that was Saturday afternoon. The river heights there are steady, and if anything, they are slowly falling. But the severe weather warning is still current for the area, and there could still be further rainfall, which, because the catchments are so saturated, means that further rises can't be ruled out. However, the window for that to occur is reducing, and based on that reduced window, just this morning, around about 9 AM, that warning for that Wilsons River at Lismore has been renewed and only now focuses on moderate flooding. The rainfall totals that we've seen since 9 AM yesterday, broadly 50 to 150 millimetres right throughout the whole of the region. Some locations up near the Dorrigo Ranges again were higher than that, and that does mean that area up near the Dorrigo Ranges continues to be the highest rainfall for the event. Some locations have reached around 800 millimetres. In terms of the outlook for the system, so later today and overnight tonight, the focus of that rainfall shifts over the northern tablelands through to the northern inland, and then the rainfall will extend southeast across central and eastern parts of the state Monday and Tuesday before easing in the middle of the week. As that rainfall does extend further south, it won't be as heavy as what we've seen further north, and that's why the flood watches haven't been extended further south. So in summary, the rainfall does continue to fall over the saturated catchments, and the rivers will respond quickly to any of that heavy rainfall. So the situation isn't over yet, even though it is easing in some parts, and everyone is encouraged to stay up to date with the latest warnings.
Look, our message to the communities of the North Coast and Northern Rivers is this is still a complex situation. There are some encouraging signs. We have seen some rivers slowly starting to have their water level drop, but at the same time, the severe weather warning remains in place, and there are parts of the catchment that if we see heavy rain coming in, particularly to rivers that are already very full, ground that is very sodden, there could absolutely be the risk of ongoing flooding. So it's incredibly important that whilst we absolutely recognise that people are keen to get back to their homes, check in on their properties, they need to listen to emergency warnings and follow the advice of the SES as they're doing that. That advice is given purely for the purposes of community safety. We just want everyone to be able to move through the tail end of this situation as safely as possible. We don't need any other circumstances, whether it's with a live electricity or on our roads where people are not following the advice of emergency services. So we are seeing some encouraging signs, which is fantastic and speaks to the preparation that we put in place, but it's really important throughout today that people are following that advice. The SES is doing everything it can to make sure that that's up to date as quickly as possible. We want to tell the community that we recognise that we need to move into that recovery phase, and there will be no daylight between the preparatory work that we did, the emergency response, and the recovery. We've already appointed a recovery coordinator for the community. Those meetings are already in place to make sure that those damage assessments are done and the support is available for local families and businesses as they move towards recovery. In terms of the evacuation centres, we have 21 centres open. There are 768 people who are staying at those evacuation centres. We have 289 people in other forms of emergency accommodation across the region, and over 1,300 people have registered for assistance at evacuation centres. It is worth noting that if people in particular local communities are having a lot of trouble with telecommunication connections and it is safe for you to access an evacuation centre, you may be able to have some telecommunication connection there. Do also want to send a particular message to residents in the Tweed Shire Council area. There are still boil water alerts for the Bilambil Heights, Terranora and some parts of Benora Point. So just make sure that you're clear if you live in any of those communities in the Tweed Shire Council, you're up to date on potential boil water alerts. Again, we're moving to try and get those lifted as soon as possible, but there has been impact of power outages and some infrastructure damage as the storm front moved through, and it's really important that residents know that there are still boil water alerts on for some particular areas. All of that information is available online. Again, we'll keep up to date as quickly as we can as to whether it's safe to access drinking water without boiling it, but at the moment, please just be careful. This is a complex situation. It's rapidly evolving. We're pleased to see those encouraging signs. We've got recovery in the corner of our eye, but we just want to make sure that we get through the next day or so, keeping everyone safe, keeping our community safe, keeping our emergency services safe.
In relation to the power on at households and businesses, there's been very good progress from Essential Energy, and I just want to thank residents for and businesses for their patience. But I can just inform you that there's just under 16,000 homes and businesses that are without power this morning. That's still a significant number, but over 13,000 were restored overnight. As the weather has eased, it has allowed crews to be deployed to start working on reconnections, and that is underway and going well. The main message here though is please stay away from power lines, and if you do see lines down, to actually report them to Essential Energy if you're in a position to do so. I think we've got most of them tracked, but in case there's anything that's happening in your local community, we really want to know what's going on there. In relation to telcos, Rose has touched on this. We believe that OOO is working in most places and the carriers are able to pick that up where there are gaps. But if you are having problems, and that is possible, there is some access if it's safe to do so in the evac centres if it's really, really necessary. We want to give you that advice. As we move to recovery, waste is a really huge issue. The EPA and others have been working very closely with councils. Every council will have the waste levy waived, and we're working through that. There's actually a meeting this afternoon where we'll be providing all of that information to councils in detail as we work towards the clean-up and find places for the immense amount of waste that's been generated by this cyclone and weather event, that is well underway. The final thing I really want to say before we go to questions is this. Pay attention to the people who are working hard to keep you and your community safe. Thank you to the community for being so responsive to these matters. I think what we've seen has been that people are mostly safe and following that advice. We really want people to continue to do that. If you haven't got hazards near me by now, please download it. If you don't know how to do it, get one of the young people in your family or your next door neighbour to get onto it. They can absolutely do it. You can set it up for your area. It will give you every piece of information about whether you should go, whether you should stay, when you can come back home. It's really, really important. The other thing I wanted to flag was that as we move into recovery, the New South Wales Government's got the website that's up and running. It's newsouthwales.gov.au/Cyclone Alfred Recovery. More information will be putting on that over the next few days as we move to support everyone to just get back to normal. But I cannot say this more than anything else. Thank you to everyone doing the right thing. Thank you to the very tired volunteers from wherever they have come across all different agencies, away from their homes, away from their families, but are just doing an outstanding job. We really thank you. But the most important thing is you've got to listen to them and do what they say. We're happy to take questions.
Minister Sharp, can we just start on as well on the ADF rollover? I appreciate it's a federal response, but obviously there was state agencies, including the police, involved. What is your understanding of the event?
Well, obviously we're very concerned for all of those ADF staff. We are working and liaising closely, the police are working closely with the ADF. I don't really want to go into a lot of the details with that. Suffice to say that we want them well and on the mend as quickly as possible. There will need to be investigation work that occurs, but I don't want to go into the details of this at this point.
Is there any questions about how the road may have been impacted?
All of that information is to come. I mean, it's very early. At the moment, we just want them to get better, and they're being supported across a number of hospitals, and the health staff are looking after them. Obviously, the ADF is very closely in touch with them and their families. But the investigation to come and all of those questions, which are legitimate questions, will be answered in due course.
The 61-year-old man whose body was found, he's been formally identified now, is that correct?
I believe so, but his family is being informed. It's obviously a tragic event. Look, no one wants to lose their life in these circumstances, but I was very... if this doesn't motivate you to understand the message around not driving through floodwaters, I think it's really important. 30 centimetres is all it takes. It's really, really unsafe. That man has lost his life. It's very tragic for him and obviously for his family. And our thoughts are with them.
Can I just ask on the potable water? It sounds as well like the Tweed Shire is providing clean drinking water to those affected communities, but not at Lambie Heights and tonight as well.
Yeah, that's right. So the Tweed Shire Council is the responsible local water utility. It is providing drinking water options to those communities. At the moment, they are relatively small communities who are impacted by the boil water alert, and the Tweed Shire Council is able to manage that. But we've been very upfront with them that if they need any other support, any other water carting or water trucking, that will be available. But we are hopeful that they will be able to get their water treatment plants back online over the next few days and have that situation resolved quickly.
Yeah, in terms of, you say it's a small community, we're dealing with less than 1,000 people impacted, 100, how many?
Look, I don't have the exact number of people impacted, although it is a small collection of communities within the Tweed Shire Council area. I should reiterate, everyone in the Tweed Shire Council is being asked to conserve water. There is pressure on the water and wastewater system in the Tweed. We do potentially think that might spread, but everyone in the Tweed Shire Council area, please just be careful about the water that you're using, try and conserve it. There's pressure that's been put on the wastewater treatment plants and the water treatment plants. A small number of communities are on boil water alerts, and the council is working very closely with them. And again, we hope to have that resolved in coming days.
It sounds like maybe there's one for the SCS or perhaps Minister Sharp wanted to, around power. While it's intermittent, there has been significant headway made in terms of restoring energy.
Yes.
Is that down to better conditions for workers going?
Yes, the main issue here is that, look, there's a lot of staff that are deployed through Essential Energy, and with safety for residents and for them has been a key issue. As the weather has eased a bit, let's be clear though, they're working in atrocious conditions, but we believe it's safe for them to do so, and as you can see overnight, they've been able to make real inroads. This will come up and down a little bit as things change, but the main focus, the main message is we're doing it as quickly as possible. I probably do need to flag though that in some smaller communities they're a fair way out. There might be ongoing access issues, and they could be still out for several days, but everyone's working as quickly as they can, and we'll keep the numbers updated as we get them.
In terms as well of total evacuations now for the SES, do we have an idea of what that's looked like? In terms of flood rescues, I know you said there were 17 in the last 24 hours, but I think it was about 30 prior to as well.
Yeah, the total flood rescues to date is 46 flood rescues for people that have entered floodwaters.
And just furthermore on that, in terms of broader evacuations, it sounds like people have been evacuated, whether it's to centres or otherwise, it's not necessarily safe for them to return to their homes just yet.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there'll be a continued focus on rapid damage assessments, and as soon as we can lift those emergency warnings so people can return, we'll do so. Don't have the number on the total evacuations, but right now 14,600 people are currently under emergency warnings.
And with the situation in Grafton, I understand has shifted a little bit with the weather moving across, is that right?
Correct, both in, and I'll hand on to Mick shortly, from a Bureau's perspective, both in Grafton and also Kempsey, we're continuing to monitor closely the impacts of the riverine flooding, but also the water that's coming down those river systems. I'll hand on to Mick to talk a bit further about that.
Yeah, so just in terms of Grafton, that sits on the Clarence River. So currently there's moderate flooding happening now at Grafton, and there's quite a lot of water moving down through that river system. And so Grafton itself may reach the major flood levels this afternoon. So that's one that's been very closely monitored.
You've noticed as well that Wilson's is at moderate level. Is there any anticipation that we'll go back up to major, or any risk with some of these isolated falls?
Yeah, the risk is really reducing now, and that's one of the reasons why that warning was specifically updated to focus on the moderate levels. But there is still a possibility of rain to come, so we'll obviously monitor it very closely, but it was a conscious decision to put that warning out and focus on the moderate flood levels.
For the SES, are there any other levees across the state that you're concerned about either overtopping or breaking?
Not at this stage, but we continue to monitor, especially with the rainfall that's coming through. It can be unpredictable. And I'll just touch also on the Lismore CBD levy and so forth. It's been in the last hour that warning from the Bureau has changed from major to moderate, so we're currently assessing what that means. We want to also make sure that we don't lift our evacuation warning and then have people go back in and then have to actually reapply it as well. So our team's, just with that recent information that's come through, assessing whether we can actually lift that warning within the Lismore CBD.